So it's important that we learn a bit about the history of the instrument of tabla. A lot of times people don't really know where things have come from, and it can really help you to understand why it functions the way it does and how it's been used in different musical traditions. So one thing to understand is that it's mostly an oral tradition. Mostly even the history of these instruments have been passed down over time. So it's sometimes hard to pinpoint things, but it's generally agreed upon that the tabla originally was inspired by an older instrument, the Pakhawaj, which is this drum here, which is a double-headed drum played predominantly to accompany drupad, an older style of vocal music. In the Mughal courts in about the 1700s, a music styled Khayal started being developed, and a new instrument was needed to accompany that. It was lighter, a little bit faster paced, and so the tabla became developed at that time. Obviously, one of the big differences is the fact that it's two drums as opposed to one drum. And that allows for some different things you can do unique on tabla that maybe you can't necessarily do on the Pakhawaj. Though it's hard to pinpoint the exact moment when tabla was actually created, most people agree that Ustad Siddhar Khan from Delhi was the first sort of major exponent of tabla playing. He was a court musician at the time, was a Pakhawaj player as well, and developed a style of playing for accompanying Khayal, which was lighter than Pakhawaj playing. One of the things he did to make it very distinct from that was he only used the first two fingers of each hand to play, so it created a much lighter sound, and that became a characteristic of the Delhi style or Delhi gharana of tabla playing. Also, a lot of the things that we play, things like peshkara and qaidas, started being developed in that tradition, and we'll get to that later. There are different styles of tabla playing, usually referred to as gharanas, and let's talk a little bit about each of those. Now, if you want to study these things, it's great. It's a big thing that you can look into, and we'll talk about more about this at other times. But just to give you a bit of an overview, so originally we had the Delhi gharana, and that was being emerged. Two grandsons moved to Lucknow because it became a center for culture and music. And in that area, the tabla players were asked to accompany dancers quite often. So because of that, more of the Pakhawaj compositions and dance compositions started being brought into the tabla repertoire. Sometime around that period as well, another offshoot, the Ajrada Benaras, emerged, not too far from Delhi as well. And many phenomenal players have come from all the different styles of playing. But one of the things about the Ajrada Benaras, they started exploring things that were in a triplet feel or in tisra jati. So many of the compositions that they were coming up with were in that style, and developing a slightly different way of playing compositions. One other thing in the Lucknow style as well is they started using more full hand because they were adopting elements of Pakhawaj playing. Out of the Lucknow gharana came some other styles of playing as well. So the Farukhabaad gharana was developed by a fantastic disciple whose guru was from the Lucknow gharana, and he developed a new way of playing and of soloing, and it's become one of the incredibly important gharanas of tabla playing. And also another offshoot from the Lucknow gharana as well, which was a bit more recent, was the Benaras gharana, which has a very sort of vigorous, full-handed sound, lots of influence of Pakhawaj in it as well, and some very unique compositions. A style that developed somewhat separately, and it's hard to really pin down, was the Punjab gharana. And that was developed predominantly from people that were playing Pakhawaj, and then a lot of that was being put onto this instrument and had a very sort of full sound as well. And it's thought that developed in a somewhat separate way. I think the important thing to remember that nowadays when you see tabla players, a lot of times they're playing compositions from many different styles of playing. In the olden days, because people didn't move as much, you would very much learn one style. But nowadays, you will sometimes see people that will stick to one particular gharana of playing. But most of the players now, especially when they're accompanying, kind of have learned from other styles as well and have drawn upon that. But it's definitely worth looking into, and whatever style of tabla playing that you've learned or that you might be learning, it's important to realize that they all have a unique beauty to them, and all have wonderful compositions that you can look into.